Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
All right, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the new generation took over the WWF. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
I'll tell you this right now, Bartlett. Columbus would have never bothered discovering America if he thought something like this was going to go on.
My goodness, true on so many levels. Joe Gimateo.
You know what, Bartlett, if you interfere with us at all while we're talking tonight, then you are going to go into a smaller cage and you'll be hoisted up.
Oh, my God. My God. There is just a steel cage Russian nesting doll of consequences.
Do you need me to repeat that 50 more times?
Yes. I might not.
A smaller cage suspended above the other cage.
Yes. Just to make it clear.
If you interfere will be hoisted in the match that you're locked out of. All right. We will get to that. Oh, my Lord, we'll get to that. I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history one episode of Raw at a time. But first, a very special shout out to Hank in New York. Thank you, Hank, for reaching out to us. Glad to hear you agree with us on the smoking guns. Thank you for that. It was good to hear from you. Thanks for subbing to us, too. Don't forget to rate and review us while you're out there and spread the good word of what's going on with wrestling around here. So, that being said, in this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on October 9th, 1995. This Raw was recorded at the Grand Center in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and features Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I am ready.
Ready.
All right, then, let's get into it. So the intro tonight for our episode. The intro is basic and straightforward. There are no teasers going into this episode. We just have the standard, what I'm calling Nitro Light opening. And welcome everyone to a special holiday edition of Monday Night Raw, which in 1995, this means that was Columbus Day or Leif Erikson Day, depending on...
We still kind of celebrate it now, right? It's on the calendar still.
It's more of an outrage holiday nowadays.
It is, but it's on the calendar.
Yeah, the tide's turning on Columbus Day.
I don't think the WWF would be celebrating Columbus Day in this day and age.
No. I don't think they're celebrating much of anything, period, these days. The intro sequence into our first match is going to be a long, drawn-out spectacle. But first, let's take a look at last week's Survivor Series press conference from Washington, D.C. Shawn Michaels is there, and he's talking about the effect that he had on some students there that are celebrating a 98% attendance record. And by his red eyes, slurred words, and flop sweat, it appears that the effect that these kids had on him is one similar to the frequent use of painkillers. All joking aside, it was a pretty touching vignette. I'm trying not to be a cynical shit about it, but it was very good.
Trying.
Yeah, well, I always fail at that. Good to see good works being done regardless, though. Back in the ring, we're still introducing people. And Vince is absolutely screaming everything he's saying, talking really fast, trying to inject this with some excitement. We're going to need as much as we can get going through the rest of this episode. We're going to cut to commercial and then come back to our first match. Owen Hart, Yokozuna, and the British Bulldog defeat Diesel and Shawn Michaels, the two dudes with attitudes, and The Undertaker by pinfall in 11 minutes and 52 seconds. So I had to spitball the start of the match to figure out the match duration here, because when we come back from commercial, the match has already started, and it's Shawn Michaels and Owen Hart to kick things off. The arm drag takedown to end their series looked great. It doesn't take long for this to turn into a clusterfuck with all 6 men in the ring at the same time, however, and Jerry the King Lawler expertly points out that he can't believe the referee isn't disqualifying anyone for triple teaming, which is a valid concern here. Equally concerning is how much action was lost to us while the camera was frantically trying to get as much action in as possible from as many different angles as possible. I would imagine that this was one of those segments that is better live and in person. It doesn't really translate to TV all that well. But we'll get replays of everything, don't worry. We'll get the replays to look at the action that we missed while we look at replays missing action.
Don't forget about the replay.
Yes, replays galore. There is just too much going on here between all 6 of these superstars to get a coherent, broad view grasp of what's happening in this match, for me at least. And now even Waylon Mercy is there, watching the match, getting his own amount of camera time up at the top of the entryway. And the King, just out of nowhere, speculates that he's got his eyes on Big Daddy Cool Diesel. That's good to know. First I'm hearing of that, but noted, King, thank you. More replays here to hide the miscommunications between Shawn Michaels and Yokozuna, but then we get back to Shawn and Owen, and things smooth out again. The Bulldog putting Shawn Michaels into a full extension military press was fairly impressive, as it always is with the Bulldog's power moves. But then we get Dean Douglas out to take notes on the match. Once again, just camera time spent on Dean Douglas that could have been spent on the action in the ring. That's enough said about him. And I do have to admit, grudgingly, that Owen and Yoko have really great timing together. Now that they've been working together for a while, whenever they're double teaming Shawn Michaels, they do like the wishbone maneuver is what I call it. I don't know if it has an official name, but when a competitor is on his back and you have 2 competitors with both legs up in the air and they split you down the groin like a wishbone out of a turkey. The timing on that was just great. The way that they worked it and the way that Michaels sold it, something about it just popped for me. I am still really, really down on Vince calling finishes on 2 counts. It's the easiest thing in the world to just say 1, 2, and leave it at that, instead of 1, 2, 3, he got him! No, he didn't. But that pales in comparison to the line, we apologize for taking this commercial break. And the shot breaks off literally as Owen Hart is in midair spread eagle in what looks like an attempt at a splash. Coming back, unfortunately, we get a close-up of the Bulldog looking as though he's struggling to perform his power slam on Diesel. His facial expressions weren't that of selling, they were the expressions of an individual having a rough time. And then, out of nowhere, due to some interference, the Bulldog gets the pin on Diesel and the victory. And when I mean out of nowhere, I mean out of nowhere. This was probably the most unexpected part of this entire match. But wait, there's more, as the King lets us know that Mabel is here looking to get in on the action. Mabel's got a hard-on for the Undertaker, apparently, as he and Yoko take turns splashing Taker in the corner. My God, the humanity. Now Dean Douglas is out to work on Shawn Michaels. The dueling splashes on Taker continue in the ring as Douglas drops Michaels on the steps at the outside. And we're going to cut to commercial with Mabel continuing to work on Taker, the Bulldog stomping on an unconscious Diesel, and Shawn Michaels in the fetal position at the outside. That's as good a place as any to end this segment. It's safe to say I hated everything about this. But if there's anyone that can give me a different angle to look at this, it's you, Joe. Please, what did you think of this match and the immediate aftermath?
Well, would you like the good or the bad first?
Anything that can get me out of this just hatred for what I witnessed in this segment.
Well, I don't know if I can help because my bad list is much longer than my good. I'll start with the good. I like the communication between Shawn Michaels and British Bulldog when they're in the ring together. You could see, like, when the Bulldog puts him up and he holds him there, Michaels kind of gives him a little bit of a tap on the chest, like, all right, time to put me down. Shawn Michaels, again, with Yokozuna, I'm intrigued by that. I think that that's something that we weren't really ever getting until the past couple weeks. So I do enjoy that. The problem is, And I guess I understand why, but Shawn Michaels was in the ring way too long. I think that it makes sense because you don't want your champ to get his ass beat for that long, your world heavyweight champion. And you can't really do it to The Undertaker, I guess. So, Shawn's kind of the odd man out there. But yeah, the hot tag just took forever. It just wasn't executed very well, in my opinion. Some bad stuff here. I mean, they probably had to edit out about 25 minutes of entrances for this match. I mean, it's just, I can't believe they did all of them for the baby faces. It just took forever. Earl Hebner was calling for the bell, but nobody cared. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but when everybody was in the ring,
I thought it looked like he did the point at one point, but no bell came.
He was waving his arms, and I'm thinking, okay, it's over, but then, nothing happened. Earl Hebner again kicks the arms when they were, who was it? Was it Owen Hart that was grabbing the ropes?
Yeah, the Bulldog was helping Owen Hart in the abdominal stretch.
Yeah. And he comes over and kicks their arms. I hate that. I don't know why, but I just can't stand that. Even Paul Bearer hates this. I mean, you could tell that he was just not as active as he normally is. Those are my thoughts. This was just really bad. The whole point of this was for this storytelling going into In Your House, but do we really have to do it with everybody? I mean, you've got 8 or 9 guys here involved, if you count Waylon Mercy. It was bad.
We're going to be in all agreement here. 1+, I think this is the first time since we've started these Raws that we had The Undertaker 2 weeks in a row. I don't remember that ever happening before.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, that's a plus. And so was the way it initially started out with Owen Hart and HBK in the ring. They started out with some really great backflips and kicks and reversals. That was some good stuff out of two legends. But then Owen gets tossed out of the ring and it turns into absolute pandemonium. I mean, just everyone gets in the ring and it doesn't really ever pick back up from there. At some point, there's sort of a repeat of how the Smoking Guns set up their victory for the belts a couple weeks ago, where Diesel and Shawn Michaels slingshot both the Bulldog and Owen into Yoko's girth. And it sends them down. They don't win the match off of it. All that does is set up a fantastic, I think you could hear the sarcasm in my voice here, their fantastic double boot by Diesel and Undertaker. Yoko, he looked delayed in it. It didn't look great, but he did look good when he fell out of the ring. He always looks good falling out of the ring. I'll give him credit there. Other than that, there was another decent exchange, and surprisingly, it involved Yoko. I thought Yoko and Undertaker exchanged, there was a part towards the middle to end of the match where they exchange, in about a 2-minute period, 2 great reversals. Yoko does this reversal where after the Undertaker launches himself off the ropes towards Yoko, and immediately Yoko catches him in a fireman's carry and then just dumps him backwards with his full 600 pounds on him. And I gotta say, for such a big man, it looked pretty fast and effective. And then a few minutes later, it was followed up by a pretty good-looking running DDT reversal from The Undertaker, which was sold pretty good by Yoko. And I thought that was kind of a highlight of this match. And then Waylon Mercy comes out. We see his face, and I'm going, do we need to add more people to this fucking match? I mean, how many more people from the backstage can we get involved here? It just kind of drags from there. We go back and forth. The Bulldog comes in, Owen comes in, and then Dean Douglas comes out. We already had Waylon Mercy. Let's add another person. Dean Douglas comes out. Sure. This is in the middle of where you were talking about with Michaels just getting the balls beat off of him for 10 minutes. And even the King mentions it. He says Michaels could take a licking and keep on kicking, because that's exactly what he's doing here, is he just gets destroyed for a while. And then it ends. I didn't expect it. Yoko gets involved and helps the British Bulldog come away with the 3 count. And then a whole bunch of interference. Mabel comes down. He's beating on The Undertaker. There's a spot in the background where we just see Yoko dropping fat ass after fat ass onto The Undertaker. And that's all we see. I will admit, though, that the ending, although kind of stupid, isn't completely out of place. You know, you have a bunch of heels coming down here trying to beat up on all of our baby faces and generate some heat. So I suppose it works in that aspect, but all in all, a pretty disappointment of a match.
Yeah, agreed. And while you did make some excellent points, I would maybe be more willing to give this the benefit of the doubt if this were the way that Raw ends in the go-home show leading into the pay-per-view, because we still have another episode of Raw in between this and the pay-per-view. And as our show opener, just so out of place. I mean, the only thing that I can think of is maybe they were trying to build up enough good faith on the part of the audience to carry us through this next segment.
Maybe we'll see more big names to start the show now that they have competition too. You know, maybe that played a part. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we're going to move on now to what I titled the after-match carnage, and that is twofold. That is both the carnage in the ring and the carnage of content that is about to assault us. But first, just real quick, Ryan, please, can you give us a Jobber of the Week update on this episode?
Absolutely. I figured no better time to just repeat old Jobber of the Week segment. I think we'll just redo Rip Rogers. How's that sound? We'll just redo the Rip Rogers segment in its entirety. No, I'm kidding, of course. No Jobber of the Week. There's no jobbers as we lead into this complete repeat of a SummerSlam match.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing what we're going to spend some time on here. And, you know, I exaggerate a little bit, but it is what it is. We come back from commercial, and our baby faces are still all laid out in the ring. While these individuals in the ring receive medical attention, let's take a look at last week's Raw, where Bret Hart and Jean-Pierre Lafitte had a demolition derby. Not only do we get a visual replay, but we get a verbal replay. Vince and the King describing what they were doing and what was going on while they were calling it. Just disjointed and filler. I mean, we've got a lot of filler going on here, folks. I was distressed to hear that we haven't heard the last of that incident, suffice to say. Vince informs us then that Jim Ross and Doc Hendricks are out looking for the different, respective sides of things from our first match of the night here to get their reactions from the 6-man tag match. But, you know what, let's not let that get in the way of reminding everybody about the upcoming Bret Hart-Isaac Yankem cage match on Raw next week. For context on that, we need to go and get a video replay of damn near the entire match that Bret and Isaac Yankem already had back at SummerSlam. This is not an exaggeration, everybody. They play, with the exception of the entrance. I want to say we miss the first 45 seconds to a minute of that match.
That's about it. Yep.
But then we get the rest of that match being played here. During this replay, and here's where things kind of went bananas for me. During this replay, Vince is telling us that if the King interferes in that upcoming cage match, the one that's going to happen on Raw next week, the King will then be placed in a second, smaller cage, lowered down from the ceiling, and dangled above the same cage match that he will be punished for interfering in by being put in a second, smaller cage and dangled above the cage. This circular description of this situation went on and on and on to the point where I could only note "what the fuck" in big letters here. I really should have counted this segment as a whole match unto itself because, again, this is a literal replay of almost the entire Hitman Yankem match from SummerSlam. It has been going this whole time that we've been getting this just convoluted stipulation on this cage match. Again, Vince repeats the shit about being put in a second, smaller cage. again saying it's as a punishment for interfering in the cage match, even though Vince has pointed out repeatedly that the cage, the original initial cage, will be locked to prevent interference. At one point, it sounded like he was entering into some kind of like time-space continuum paradox where Lawler is simultaneously in the cage and potentially interfering. It's like Schrodinger's Lawler here going on. It really became convoluted and started to lose me. It also got to the point where I refused to add anything more about any of this because it just kept on going. It kept on fucking going until the end of that SummerSlam match. Joe, again, I hated everything about this. Can you please give me a better way of looking at it?
Unfortunately, I cannot. Probably about 2 minutes in, I'm saying to myself, I guess we're just going to watch this entire match again from over a month ago. And I don't understand what the point of this was. And yeah, the stipulations are so convoluted for next week that it's just, I don't care about this at all. Yeah. Like, you go from SummerSlam, you want Bret Hart to get his revenge, but now I don't care. I want it to be over. I want Yankum gone forever and Bret Hart to just move on to another feud.
Yeah, this was some of the worst stuff we've seen in a long time. I mean, this had flashbacks to the clip show with Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah,
is what this felt like. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Joe. You know, it took me a good 2-3 minutes to realize, like, this isn't a highlight video. This is the entire match from SummerSlam. I mean, and it also became very clear at this point that they are running out of content and they are trying to stretch this episode as much as possible, and it's not working. Did you mark how long this lasted?
No, going into it, I didn't, because I didn't think it was going to wind up like this.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good 10 minutes or maybe slightly less, you know, maybe 7-8 minutes, but it was almost the entire fucking match. I mean, this took longer than your typical Raw jobber match, and it was just a complete replay.
With new commentary.
Yeah, a replay with new commentary pushing this absolutely absurd nested cage bullshit.
Well, they have to get the comedy in there. You know, it's like, let's put Lawler in a cage and
the whole time, all I'm thinking of about this smaller cage above the other cage, for some reason in my head, I'm thinking about Willow.
Oh my goodness.
Hoisted in a small cage. I don't know why that was the immediate thought that ran to my head.
Mad Mardigan. Val Kilmer's Mad Mardigan in that little cage, yeah.
Yeah, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, we're all in agreement on this because it was almost like a jaw-dropping kind of absurdity to it. Like, the more that they went on about it, and I don't understand, like, why they just felt the need to keep on repeating it. Like, repeating it doesn't make it make any more sense. With all of these other ridiculous stipulations we've had recently, where they had to, like the triple threat match with the belts, where they had to go into elaborate, explanations about things. Even as convoluted as those were, in the end, they were more or less straightforward. You got the idea the first time. Yeah, it required a lengthy explanation, but once it was done, you were like, okay, I get what's going on. And then they just repeated it ad nauseum. With this, it's, okay, so here, maybe I missed this. One of you guys can answer this for me. There's a cage match, right? Bret and Yankum are going to be in this cage. Door's going to be locked to keep anybody from interfering. If Lawler does interfere, which he shouldn't be able to because the cage is locked, they're going to put him in a smaller cage and dangle him above the ring. So does that mean that they have like a crane on standby? Are they going to pause the match to put him in there? Because like now...
It sounded like it. Vince at one point said they will lower the smaller ring from the roof.
Okay. And like what that says to me is you are now going to create two competing points of interest. People aren't going to be paying attention to the match because they're going to be paying attention to this fucking cage thing going on.
And Lawler, whatever antics I'm sure he would be pulling inside the cage.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're putting comedy into it. they're putting their comedy piece into it.
And not to mention, there are all these hints dropped about who backstage would be able to get Lawler into that cage.
You know, I have to say, now that we're a few months into the Gorilla Monsoon reign, I'm looking back fondly at the Jack Tunney days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just, I don't know. This isn't like the other shit. Like I said, the other shit made sense, even though they beat it into the ground. This doesn't make sense at all. There's nothing about this that my brain hurts just thinking about. Like, I need to take another drink.
Yeah, we don't need to beat it into the ground either. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Before we get hoisted above the ring.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thankfully, after all of that crap that just happened, the ring has been cleared from that 6-man catastrophe. That was the justification for showing us that match replay, because they needed all that time to get just the men scrubbed from the floor of the ring. And now we can have our final match of the night. That's right, you heard me. There's only 2 matches here tonight, real matches. Make a Difference Fatu defeats Skip of the Body Donnas by pinfall in 6 minutes and 16 seconds. Nope. We can't have this goddamn match, because while Fatu is coming down to the ring, we're going to take a look at this past Friday at Madison Square Garden. There was some kind of benefit being held for the underprivileged and handicapped. The superstars were out pressing the flesh with such individuals. And again, joking aside, it is good to see that they are doing good works. I would just prefer not to see it after my match stuff has started here. But wait. The producers are telling the king that something is going on back in the locker room. Apparently, it's a commercial break, because that's where we go. And it's the World Tour de Force commercials that you may remember from quite a while ago. They've got a new world tour going on here, and they are advertising house shows for it. Mabel is trying to get in the dressing room, the babyface dressing room. And this is what the king keeps throwing at us. That's that news that he was getting about something going on and back in the back. And for once, Vince tries to keep us focused on the match. Of all of the people that I expected to be a voice of sanity, it was not Vince McMahon on this. I hate to say this, but I absolutely hated Skip selling a fear of Fatu dancing. This is a theme that ran rampant throughout this match. There's the legendary, what would you say, resilience of the heads of the head shrinkers. You can beat the head shrinkers, or in this case, just Fatu. You can beat them in the face with a crowbar, and they will laugh and shake it off. Skip didn't know that. He takes Fatu's head and tries to ram it into the top turnbuckle in the corner, and that, of course, does nothing. Fatu no-sells it. It does inspire him to dance a little bit, though. And as in reaction to the dancing, Skip goes, no, and backs up with his hands up out of the way. Lost a lot of respect with Skip on that one, unfortunately. It'll come back eventually, but, it was not fun to see. Sonny distracts Fatu long enough to draw Fatu out of the ring, and apparently making a difference doesn't include eliminating aggressive sexual advances on unconsenting women, because Fatu blows kisses and makes suggestive facial expressions as he slowly and creepily advances on Sonny. But thankfully that doesn't last too long, and the action resumes in the ring. Here's where we get commentary, making quite a big deal out of Fatu's head being made out of concrete. That's the story, as Vince repeatedly calls Skip an idiot for trying to punch or kick or headbutt Fatu. I can't think of any other time where Vince was this vocally just degrading of a talent in the ring for something as simple as this. And it's repeatedly that Vince calls Skip an idiot. He's an idiot! And after just more general ridiculousness, Fatu finally gets the victory with a splash. Ryan, I don't know what to think about this match. What did you have to say about it?
Yeah, it's a tough one to call, because, I'm just going to start off with the Madison Square Gardens and the charity event before I actually get into the ring work here. But again, I have to say, say what you will about the WWF and some of the shit that they do, but they really do like to go out of their way and help out these different charities. And as we found out last week, sometimes with or without their consent. But still, they like to get involved, so I do think that should be pointed out. It starts off, Skip tries to hit Fatu's head in the turnbuckle, like you said. That just angers the former head shrinker. He's just a street guy now. He's not a former Islander, but the head strength has continued. And, to be honest, the actual wrestling between these two guys was pretty good. There's a spot where Skip moves out of the way just in time as Fatu's charging towards him in the turnbuckle, and he rams his shoulder into the turnbuckle, and the timing was perfect on it for both guys. And Skip is landing a lot of great looking hits. And then there's this common story that's going through it, though, the entire match, which is Skip every once in a while will hit Fatu in the head. And the moment that happens, he hurts his fist and he has to shake it off, or Fatu starts dancing or whatever. There's always something to, as you said, lead to Vince calling Skip an idiot for trying to hit Fatu in the head. And this kind of hits a crescendo when he tries to do a diving headbutt off the top rope into Fatu's head, and Skip just jumps up holding his forehead, and that makes Fatu jump up and dance like he's never danced before. He rallies, gets the offensive from that point, and the 3 count. So I actually thought that some of the wrestling in this match was pretty entertaining, but the continuous burial of Skip, I think it's official. He is a carpenter at this point. I think that's the right term for him. He's just someone in there who has great ring skills, but it's solely to put over up-and-coming stars. Poor Skip.
Ryan, are you sure there's not a jobber of the week in this episode? Because Skip is officially a jobber. I didn't have anything else noted here. I have a couple things, but this was really irritating to me because I saw this happen. Okay, Skip versus Fatu, and I'm telling myself, like, man, they can't have Skip lose this match. They just can't. And they did. I mean, you just came off this Barry Horowitz bullshit. That's kind of over, I guess. And then you do this. It's like, man, this is not going well for a company that needs better heels and could have one here, at least to work with like the mid-card guys. But he's a jobber. Right now, he's a jobber. I don't think he'll stay a jobber, but right now he is. Vince is calling him an idiot during the match, like you mentioned, and that just makes him more of a jobber, in my opinion. I had to note that Fatu just threw a regular old punch at Skip, and Vince said, "What a maneuver that was."
Yeah. Great point about being a jobber. The shit that Vince is saying, because when you said that, it made me think there have been plenty of times where jobbers just shit the bed in the ring on national television, and Vince's reaction was, well, I don't think that was a very good idea.
Yeah, Vince is burying him in the ring by having him lose again, and he's burying him on commentary.
It really makes you wonder just what the hell the deal is with it.
Is the shit with his wife going on backstage at this point? Like, is the rumors of her basically being a whore, is that going around at this point?
You mean Sonny?
Yeah, Sonny.
Yeah, they were never married.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. You know what I mean.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I'm just wondering.
She's still like her conservative gimmick right now.
Well, I understand the gimmick. I'm just saying backstage-wise, what are the rumors? Only because, we've heard, I know from JR, I've heard that in different situations, Vince McMahon, in a situation like this, would immediately look down on the guy and bury him because he sees him as basically a weak beta.
A cuck. Sees him as a cuck.
Right.
I don't know. That's a really great question because, we do know that at some point she starts cheating on Candido with Shawn Michaels.
And this is real life, not storyline.
Yeah, in real life, to the point where like other wrestlers in shoot interviews have mentioned where they were just like, God damn, like, come on, kind of a thing, you know, like just Chris, open your fucking eyes kind of a thing. But I don't know. I have no idea when that starts or.
It's just, I'm wondering because it looks like at this point he has zero respect for Skip.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's something that we'll hear about moving forward with the Observer News. Meltzer seems to have his finger on the pulse of a lot of things, and I'm really curious to hear if that starts coming up in the weekly news reports once it starts happening. All right, well, coming out of that match, we're back with Doc Hendricks. Oh, wait, we're not. As we cut to commercial. Since we don't have that, let's have a replay of highlights from the 6-man clusterfuck earlier. This goes on for a while, pretty much repeating the entirety of the finish, and then we finally do get to Doc Hendricks. And while we were thinking that he might have an interview for us, this is going to be Doc standing in front of a door and a wall, saying that he doesn't think it's the best time for an interview. Apparently, Shawn Michaels collapsed right in front of him. Big Daddy Cool is anything but, and the Undertaker took the brunt of the damage. Doc tries to open the clearly locked door as he tells us that he'll give us that interview that he just told us he couldn't get. I'll give it to you if you want it. No, don't worry about it. But we'll go instead to Jim Ross. Jim Ross is in the heel locker room with Jim Cornette and the British Bulldog. This kind of bothered me a little bit. JR charges in and starts with, "You gentlemen should explain yourself," as if JR is some kind of moral authority here. I didn't really care for that. I thought maybe JR should just be saying, what do you have to say about what's going on here? But anyway, Cornette cuts a pretty good promo for us here while the Bulldog is flexing and happy, and this was classic. The content of the promo isn't classic level, but the staging of it. You have Cornette in the background with the microphone in his face, and then in front of him, the talent flexing and acting like an ass. This was what I imagine his promos were a lot like back in his WCW days. The Bulldog then takes a turn cutting a promo, and the Bulldog does a pretty good job at it. He's talking about that frozen hellhole Winnipeg, where he will meet Diesel. And then Mabel comes in. Mabel. And this time he doesn't have nearly as good of a promo to cut for us as he has previously. In the recent past, we were a little bit up on Mabel's promos. Never his ring ability, but his promos, there were positive things said. I personally have nothing positive to say about this promo. It was kind of a backstep, I felt. We go back to ringside out of there, where Vince quintuples down on the fact that the King is going to be put in a second, smaller cage above the match that he is forbidden to interfere in. And just to rub sulfuric acid into the wounds, we'll get a Todd Pettingzoo voiceover cut over that Van Halen Right Now knockoff, detailing the stipulations of that cage over a cage insanity. That's what takes us off as we fade to black. Ryan, what did you think about the way that Raw ended tonight?
Terrible. I mean, it was just, some of these promos weren't bad. Like you said, when they go to Jim Cornette, Cornette did a perfectly fine job, and so did the British Bulldog. I liked him talking about bringing the, title back to England and dissing on Winnipeg. That was good stuff too. Mabel's promo on The Undertaker, like you said, not one of the best promo out of Mabel that we've seen. It was just one useless segment after another. Then we move back to Vince McMahon again talking about this smaller cage inside of another cage on top of the cage match. Just a lot of filler. I mean, that's really the key word for this episode is filler. Including Joe, you got your wish. Todd fucking Pettingzoo's back. We got a voiceover for him to close out the show. How lucky.
Yeah, the British Bulldog is wearing a plain brown baseball cap. He looks like a total narc.
Yeah.
This was probably... Bartlett, I like what you mean by saying that this is kind of a classic style thing that they're doing here, going into the locker room with the heels, proud of what they just did. this was probably the first time that I wouldn't say it was great, but I can accept the British Bulldog as a heel now after seeing this finally. So, that was okay. The Mabel promo, first off, why is Mabel even associated with these guys? We don't really know why. Same with the Undertaker. Like, they just kind of pulled this Mabel Undertaker thing into this storyline, and it just doesn't really make any sense. It's just, they're crossing the streams too much with all of these guys instead of just keeping them in their own individual feuds.
And just like the fucking Ghostbusters warn us, you shouldn't cross the streams. When you put the Undertaker with the two dudes with attitudes, the end of the fucking world's going to come.
And not like it would be much better if they split it like they should, but this is not helping matters. So I don't know why they're doing it. This is something that you would do prior to a Survivor Series, maybe, when they do their Survivor Series teams, but we're going into an In Your House, not Survivor Series, so I don't know. And I can't believe they did not get sued by Van Halen, because that song is a complete ripoff.
Yep. And if you remember the Undertaker American flag under the coat, that was leading into a Survivor Series where it actually made a little bit of sense.
That is a great point that I didn't even think of. It's like with this 6-man tag, and for the record, I am not a fan of any more than 4-man tag matches, as in 2 traditional tag teams. Once you get up to a 6-man tag match, I feel that starts to lose quality for me. It starts to get a bit gimmicky. And then, you bump it up to the Survivor Series matches and it's even worse. But that's a great point. I feel like any excitement or interest I might have had going into Survivor Series has been wasted on this. Not that I would have had a whole lot to begin with, but why are we getting this almost Survivor Series-esque type situation before Survivor Series? I mean, it's better than midget shit, definitely, but I don't know, man. It all feels so haphazard and just patched together. I don't know. Well, as I said, we faded to black, and for those of you listening out there, we are running fast on this one. That's because there just simply wasn't a whole lot of new content here to talk about. Out of this 46-minute give or take episode, there was a grand total of, let me see, 6.5 plus... There was a grand total of 17 minutes of wrestling. So, filler.
New wrestling.
New wrestling, yes. Yes. Thank you for that clarification. New wrestling. The rest is what I would qualify as filler. And that being said, keeping that in mind, let's take it over to highlights and lowlights. Joe, please go first.
I do not have a highlight. This is the first time I can't come up with one. I'm sorry. And I want to point out that in my reliving of the Monday Night Wars, on Monday Nitro, you got a match between Jerry Lynn and Sabu, and your main event was Arn Anderson versus Ric Flair in a steel cage match. So I know what I'm watching if I had the choice.
Especially after Bischoff gives me the results of this episode anyway.
Yeah. I could pick a lot of things. I could just say the entire episode pretty much, but low light, I am going to go with Skip's complete burial and official title of jobber.
Yeah.
So my highlight is in complete agreement with Joe. I fucking couldn't come up with one. This is a first, I think, where at least 2 of us, it's possible 3, but at least 2 of us could not come up with a highlight. There was not a highlight out of tonight's episode. And my low light, Joe, I'm right there with you again. The burial of Skip. This needs to end. This guy is a great wrestler, and he's got a good gimmick with a great manager, and we are week in and week out burying the poor fuck.
Yeah, I really wish, and I tried. I did. I wish I could come up with a highlights. But we're 3 for 3. There was nothing good about this episode. And unlike both of you, I can't be high-minded enough to isolate a specific low light For me, it just follows that since there is nothing good about this episode, the entire episode is bad. The whole episode is a low light for me. So
it was just the skip part really put a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah. Oh yeah. To absolutely correct with that. And it was part of the whole package, you know?
The total package.
Yeah. just when we thought we were away from it. All right. Well, Joseph, can you please give us some kind of entertaining news? Because we sure as shit didn't get anything entertaining out of this episode. Some entertaining news from on and around October 9th, 1995.
I will do my best. I have a few items here. Number one is that we have In Your House 4 coming up here in a couple weeks, but In Your House 5 will be happening in December, and that will be held in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So that is notable for the three of us being from Pennsylvania, so that will be nice to see.
It's also notable in that, just going off my memory, I want to say that In Your House 5 is a classic. I think that goes down as one of the good ones.
Yeah, I have a feeling it'll probably be pretty good. And another thing is, WWE doesn't really, they do house shows in Hershey now, but they don't do Raw or pay-per-views from Hershey anymore, so that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, because it's an enormous stadium. I mean, it fits a lot of people.
Yeah, the stadium, but this is probably in the arena, the hockey.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's what I mean, the arena. The arena is pretty big, too.
Yeah, it's a good size. Another note here is that you guys remember the Fan Fest that they would always advertise before WrestleMania?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're not going to do that this year. Apparently, for WrestleMania 12, there will be no Fan Fest, but they are going to be holding WrestleMania in Anaheim, California, and there will, instead of a Fan Fest, there will be an autograph signing at Disneyland. So look for some sort of collaboration with Disneyland in the weeks leading up to WrestleMania.
A Mickey Mouse match.
Yes. Mickey Mouse versus Dink.
As opposed to the rest of the stuff we're getting here.
Right.
Last note here is that we are going to see a debut that I am looking forward to in a few weeks here. Would you like me to reveal who that is?
I would. I want to know.
Al Snow.
Nice.
Yes.
Will be making his debut, and Dave Meltzer says that he's going to be a babyface, and he is supposed to have a good gimmick. That's all Dave is telling us right now. He did mention that it will not be the Crow gimmick that was rumored. Oh. So I found that to be interesting that Al Snow was possibly going to do a Crow gimmick and then Sting uses it later on.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's where Scott Hall got the idea to give Sting the Crow gimmick.
Just going off of a little bit of memory here, Al Snow comes in and teams up with Marty Jannetty, right?
At a certain point, yes, but
that's not right away.
Will be no.
Okay.
And this is going to be great. I actually remember this gimmick that he's going to use, and it's fantastic. So we have that to look forward to in a couple weeks, hopefully.
Yes. I don't remember seeing the gimmick as a kid. I do know what it is, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it holds up over time. But I just want to add, on a personal level, I am an enormous fan of Al Snow.
Part of the Job Squad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Job Squad, Al Snow's time in ECW, I really, really like Al Snow. And I know that it's just an ordinary...
And Marty Jannetty.
No. Not so much Jannetty.
Can't wait for that team up.
I know that it's just an ordinary Death Valley driver or Michinoku driver or whatever you want to call it, but it was seared into my brain and heart as the snowplow as a finishing move. I thought that was, as a teenager in the 90s, seeing that crazy motherfucker with the head in ECW giving people the snowplow, that just...
don't get too excited because we're far from that.
Far from the snowplow at this moment, yeah.
I know, but still,
We have to dig our way through some shit first.
We won't be getting head for a couple more years.
I know.
Right.
I'm allowed to be wistful, god damn it. Especially when all I have to go off of are episodes like this. But you know what, guys? Thank goodness it's over. That's it, folks. We are done with this one. Put a fucking nail in that coffin. I want to thank you again for joining us, and if you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can find us on every major social media and podcast subscription platform by searching up the handle Wrasslin Raw. That's WRASSLINRAW. While you're there, don't forget to click subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review, and let your friends know about the fastest growing wrestling podcast in the world. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be taking a look at the Raw that aired on October 16th, 1995, with matches featuring Joe Dorgan, Doink the Clown, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.